João, a 23-year-old young man, felt the weight of memories from last year's vacation resting heavily on his shoulders. He sat in his small apartment, gazing at old photos from the last family trip. The sound of his nieces' and nephews' laughter still echoed in his mind, mixed with a bitter sense of tiredness and frustration. Every smile in those pictures brought back memories of sleepless nights, diaper changes, and crying children. The image of his parents and his sister Anna enjoying the beach and the sun while he was stuck with babysitting duties still gnawed at him. João had always been a responsible young man dedicated to his family. Since childhood, he had taken on the role of caretaker, always trying to lighten his parents' load. But last summer was the breaking point. He was exhausted, drained, feeling like his own life was being suffocated by family expectations and demands. What should have been a time of rest and leisure turned into a nightmare of responsibilities. With another vacation approaching, João decided that something needed to change. He stood up, determined, and walked into the living room where his parents and Anna were discussing the preparations. With a firm voice, filled with suppressed emotions, he announced that this time he would drive alone and stay in a separate hotel. He wanted for the first time to experience the freedom of choosing how to spend his days of rest. The silence that followed his declaration was deafening. His parents looked at him with surprise and a hint of concern, while Anna, visibly irritated, crossed her arms and gave him a defiant look. João knew his decision wouldn't be well received, but he was determined not to back down. He needed this change. He needed to feel that his life belonged to him, and that his desires also held value. As he sat back on the couch, mentally preparing for the storm he knew would come, there was a spark of hope and relief within him. For the first time, he felt like he was taking control of his life, even if it meant facing his sister's disapproval and anger. João took a deep breath, knowing that this was just the beginning of a difficult but necessary battle to find his own path. Anna, her eyes blazing with anger, broke the tense silence that had settled in the room. She stood up abruptly and began to argue fervently, her words laden with resentment and frustration. "How can you be so selfish, João? We are a family, and you decide to just abandon us on our vacation, always doing things your way without considering the consequences for others." João's parents tried to intervene, seeking to calm the situation, but Anna was determined to make João change his mind. She appealed emotionally, mentioning how everyone relied on his presence and how important it was for family unity to be together. For a moment, João almost succumbed to the guilt pulsing in his chest, but then he remembered the sleepless nights, the endless hours looking after the nieces and nephews while everyone else had fun. He looked up at Anna, his feelings a mix of hurt and the need to be understood. "I love our family, Anna, but I can't keep sacrificing my own happiness for expectations that suffocate me," he said calmly, trying to keep his voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside him. The argument continued for hours, alternating between moments of intensity and silent tension. João felt as though he was in a battle for the right to live his life according to his own choices. Every word exchanged was a test of emotional resilience, a struggle to make himself understood without hurting those he loved even more. By the end of the night, as everyone retreated to their rooms, João remained in the living room, gazing out the window at the starry sky. He knew the decision hadn't been easy for anyone, but he also knew it was necessary for his own sanity. Uncertainty hung over him like a dark cloud, but there was also a sense of relief in finally expressing his truth. That night, he fell asleep with a heavy heart, yet with the certainty that something had irreversibly changed within him. The battle was far from over, but he was determined to move forward, even if it meant navigating uncharted territory within his own family. In the days following the heated argument, the atmosphere in João's parents' house was laden with tension and discomfort. Anna avoided looking directly at João, while their parents tried to strike a delicate balance between supporting their eldest son and soothing their youngest daughter's emotions. Meanwhile, João found himself in a state of deep introspection. He questioned whether he had made the right decision by insisting on his own needs. Guilt gnawed at him from within, yet there was also a spark of resilience that kept him steadfast in his purpose. He no longer wanted to be merely the family's right-hand man, sacrificing his own aspirations and desires in the process. The lack of dialogue between him and Anna hurt more than the harsh words exchanged that night. They had always been close, sharing secrets and laughter since childhood, but now there was a growing chasm between them. João tried to find the words to start a conversation, but fear of confrontation and rejection paralyzed him. Time seemed to stretch on, each day dragging as they waited for the next move in the silent dance that family life had become. When Anna finally broke the silence, it wasn't with words but with actions. She tried every possible way to manipulate their parents into pressuring João to change his mind. Quiet sobs in the still nights, disapproving glances at family dinners. Anna was willing to do anything to revert things to how they were before that cursed argument. But João remained steadfast. He knew that giving in now would mean losing not only his autonomy, but also the newfound self-esteem. He refused to take down the social media post he made about the situation. It was a small act of resistance, a silent declaration that he would no longer be silenced or manipulated. As tensions escalated at home, João found solace in his friends and colleagues. He opened up about his anxieties and doubts, finding support and advice that helped him hold his ground. Slowly, he began to realize that he wasn't alone in his quest for autonomy and respect within his own family. And so life went on, fraught with silences and loaded glances, each gesture telling a tale of hurt and resistance. Time dragged on, but João knew that the resolution to this internal battle was near. He just needed the courage to face the next chapter of this family saga, knowing that the outcome could transform his relationships forever. As days passed, the tension in João's parents' home seemed to solidify into a thin, fragile layer of ice. Every move was carefully calculated to avoid new conflicts, but beneath the gentle words and forced smiles lay a chasm of unresolved emotions. João found himself in a state of constant introspection. He reflected on the choices he had made and their impact on his family. The sense of guilt persisted, yet at the same time, he recognized the importance of voicing his own needs. It was an internal conflict consuming him, a battle between the desire for family harmony and the need for personal autonomy. In moments of solitude, he allowed himself to revisit childhood memories of the happy times shared with Anna and their parents. The images of genuine laughter and warm embraces now seemed distant and almost unreal. He questioned if he had lost a part of himself by choosing the path of independence. Anna, on the other hand, seemed absorbed in her own world of hurt and unmet expectations. She avoided direct confrontations with João, but her presence was like a constant shadow, reminding him of the consequences of his decisions. At every family meal, in every shared moment in the living room, there was an invisible barrier between them, as if the air around them was charged with static electricity ready to explode. João's parents tried to bridge the gap between their two children, but even they couldn't dissolve the tension hanging in the air. They watched with concern the fractured dynamics of the family they loved so much, unsure of how to resolve the deadlock that had settled in. Deep down, João wished to find a way to reconcile that wouldn't compromise his personal integrity. He sought answers in his own reflections and in the support of friends who encouraged him to stand firm in his convictions. Life went on, days turning into weeks as João tried to navigate the turbulent waters of his family life. Every small gesture, every unspoken word, was a painful reminder of the emotional distance that had opened up between him and his sister, between him and the family that had once been his safe haven. And so, amid sighs of regret and moments of self-discovery, João prepared for the next chapter of this emotional journey, knowing that the road ahead would be filled with challenges and perhaps opportunities for healing and mutual understanding. As time passed, attempts at reconciliation between João and Anna proved fragile and fraught with invisible obstacles. Anna, still hurt and determined to restore family harmony on her terms, took desperate measures to reverse the situation. She began with subtle hints during meals, trying to gauge if João would reconsider his decision. However, each attempt was met with steadfast silence and a look that revealed his resolve. The tension between them reached a new level when Anna tried to persuade their parents to intervene more directly. However, João's parents, understanding the importance of his desire for autonomy, hesitated to pressure him. They remained neutral, trying to be a comforting presence for both children but unable to resolve the deadlock. On a hot, muggy summer night, Anna confronted João directly. She found him in their parents' backyard, under the soft glow of Japanese lanterns, where the scent of flowers mingled with freshly cut grass. Anna seemed resolute, her eyes shining with a mix of anger and accumulated hurt. She argued passionately, trying to convince him to delete the social media post he had made about the vacation incident. "You're hurting our family, João," she said with a trembling yet firm voice. "Don't you see how this affects us? How it divides us?" João listened to every word with a heavy heart. He understood Anna's perspective. but he was now determined not to back down. "Anna, I understand how you feel," he began, his voice filled with compassion, tinged with sadness. "But I also have the right to be heard, to have my own needs respected." The discussion continued for hours, a dance of words laden with restrained emotions and arguments intertwined with shared childhood memories. The conflict between them unfolded into a complex narrative of love, loyalty, and individual aspirations. As the night wore on, João realized that his decision had profound ramifications not just for himself, but for the entire family dynamic. In the days that followed, the silence between João and Ana became almost deafening. They shared family meals without exchanging a word beyond the necessary. Every gesture, every glance carried the weight of an unresolved story, of unspoken conflicts clinging to them like persistent shadows. Meanwhile, João found comfort and support in his friends and colleagues. They encouraged him to stand firm in his convictions, reminding him that his pursuit of autonomy wasn't selfish, but a fundamental right of every human being. These interactions outside the family circle offered him a renewed perspective and a sense of validation that he desperately needed. As the summer progressed, João knew that resolving this family dispute was beyond his immediate control. He hoped, with a mix of apprehension and hope, that some mutual understanding could emerge from the emotional chaos that had settled between him and Ana. As the summer progressed, a new vacation was planned by the family. This time, João was determined to participate, but on his own terms. He booked a room at a hotel near the chosen destination for the trip, making it clear from the outset that he wouldn't take on the role of caring for the children. Tension was palpable as the family gathered to depart. Ana still looked at João with a mix of resentment and hope, as if waiting for one last moment of weakness from him. The parents, meanwhile, were nervous, hoping the trip would be a healing time for the emotional wounds that had opened between their children. On the first day of the trip, João kept his promise. He participated in family activities but resisted being dragged into the caregiver role. Instead, he seized the opportunity to reconnect with himself, exploring the surroundings and finding moments of peace and reflection by the seaside. Ana, on the other hand, was visibly uncomfortable with João's presence without his usual involvement with the nieces and nephews. She tried a few times to subtly delegate responsibilities to him, but João gently refused, skillfully deflecting the situation with diplomacy. Days unfolded with a mix of tension and calmness. João felt torn between gratitude for being present with the family and the weight of unmet expectations. Every shared smile and moment of family relaxation was overshadowed by the unresolved conflict between him and Ana. At night, as everyone retired to their rooms, João gazed out the window at the sparkling stars in the sky. He wondered if he would ever find a balance between his own needs and his love for his family. Conversations with his friends continued to be a refuge of support and encouragement, but he longed for a deeper, more personal resolution within the family circle. Despite persistent tensions, João began to notice small gestures of reconciliation from Ana. She started avoiding direct confrontations and instead showed more openness to sharing moments of lightness and camaraderie with him. Small conversations arose about trivial matters like the weather or the day's activities, but there was an unspoken subtext of forgiveness floating in the air between them. In moments of solitude, João found himself reflecting on the meaning of this trip. It was more than just a break from daily routines. It was an opportunity to rediscover family ties and find a path to mutual healing. He knew the road ahead would still be challenging, but there was a glimmer of hope growing inside him, a hope that perhaps they could find common ground where everyone could flourish in their own uniqueness. Last day of the trip, a gentle breeze blew in from the ocean, carrying with it a sense of anticipation and uncertainty. João woke up early and strolled along the deserted beach, his feet sinking into the damp sand. He watched the sunrise in shades of orange and pink painting the horizon, pondering what the day held for him and his family. Upon returning to the hotel, he found Ana sitting on the terrace, gazing out at the sea with a thoughtful expression. She seemed lost in her own thoughts, her eyes fixed on the waves breaking gently on the shore. João hesitated for a moment, but decided to approach, gently resting his hand on her shoulder. Ana turned slowly to look at him, her eyes moist with unspoken emotions. For a moment, time seemed suspended between them, a space where words were unnecessary to convey the weight of shared experiences and past hurts. I didn't want things to come to this, João, Anna began, her voice laden with regret and vulnerability. I just wanted you to understand how difficult this all has been for me too. João looked into her eyes, seeing beyond the facade of anger and frustration. He saw the sister who had always been by his side, even in the toughest times. I know, Anna, he replied softly. I'm sorry too for things getting to this point. I never wanted to hurt you. Tears finally escaped from Anna's eyes, rolling gently down her cheeks. She took a deep breath, trying to control the emotions overwhelming her. I know I can't change what happened, she murmured. But I want to try to make things better between us. João smiled with sadness and gratitude. He knew that forgiveness wouldn't erase the scars of the past, but it would pave the way for a new beginning. He hugged Anna, feeling the tension between them slowly dissipate, replaced by the comforting feeling of love and reconciliation. As the sun rose in the sky, bathing them in golden light, João and Anna remained there, embraced, sharing a moment of mutual understanding. They knew that the journey to heal family wounds would be long and challenging, but they were determined to face it together, side by side. At the end of the trip, when they returned home, a new energy hovered over João's parents' house. Conversations flowed more lightly, smiles were more genuine. João and Anna had learned to respect each other's differences, recognizing that each had their own path to walk in life. And so, the summer that began with tension and conflict ended with a silent promise of forgiveness and renewal. João discovered that true autonomy wasn't about distancing himself from family, but finding a balance between his own needs and the bonds that connected him to those he loved. As he looked out at the horizon, watching the sun set in a spectacle of colors, João felt grateful for the emotional journey that had brought him there. He knew that while the future was still uncertain, he had found a new understanding of what it meant to be part of a family, a journey of love, forgiveness, and mutual growth.